Her songs became empowering anthems for young women in the 90s. 2.5 decades later, does her new music still speak to that same but now older generation? My review of Such Pretty Forks in the Road by Alanis Morissette is coming up next on Track by Track. Hey everybody, my name's Kyle and this is Track by Track, music reviews, news, and commentary. Thanks for tuning in today, and if this is your first time here, please take a second to click subscribe so that you won't miss future reviews and more. Jagged Little Pill by Alanis Morissette is one of the landmark albums of the 90s that I will always associate with my time managing a record store. We played it in-store all the time during the summer of '95, which was actually a bit of a challenge. See, this was a chain store in a shopping mall, so we had to be careful about lyrics, and Alanis's You Oughta Know had one giant F-bomb in it. But you can't not play that song, so what can you do? Our solution was distraction. Whenever the song came on, we'd scan the store for customers that looked like they might be offended. Then we'd stealthily approach them, timing our pace to the music so at just the right moment. Can I help you find anything? Worked every time. Now obviously, Jagged Little Pill was the pinnacle of Morissette's career in terms of sales, selling over 30 million copies worldwide up through the 25th anniversary this year. Her 1998 follow-up, Supposed Former Infatuation Junkie, sold a meager 2.5 million copies, going platinum only 3 times. From there, her sales seemed to see about a 50% drop with each subsequent release up until Havoc and Bright Lights in 2012, which still landed in the top 10 but moved less than 100,000 copies. From a music and songwriting perspective, though, I feel like Alanis has been fairly consistent from album to album. I think she's definitely matured over the years, which may partially explain why she's seen her album sales slide. Listeners who were primarily drawn to her because they were looking for an angry, independent woman may have been disappointed when she didn't step up to become their standard bearer. And while she may have been one of the biggest acts associated with the boom in women's music in the mid to late 90s, she never did join any of her iconic sisters in one of the Lilith Fair tours. Fast forward to 2020, and after an 8-year absence, we're finally seeing Alanis Morissette's 9th studio album, Such Pretty Forks in the Road. This album's release was intended to coincide with the 25th anniversary tour for Jagged Little Pill this year, which was set to include both Liz Phair and Garbage. You'll have to wait until 2021 for that, along with pretty much any live music at this point. And of course, it's a shame she still doesn't have that high-profile event to lean this comeback album up against. Now, I don't know if comeback is necessarily the right word for it, but after 8 years away, it doesn't feel inappropriate. In fact, I think it's fair to say that a lot has changed since Alanis Morissette last released an album. Both streaming music and social media existed when she released Havoc and Bright Lights in 2012, but neither were as enormously prominent as they are today. We're seeing many legacy artists very effectively launch new albums in 2020 by smartly leveraging those platforms, so I think Alanis is well positioned with her new music. To that end, she kicks off Such Pretty Forks in the Road with what may be the strongest reminder on the track list of who she is, or who perhaps her casual fans think she is anyway. Smiling was actually originally written for the 2018 Broadway adaptation of Jagged Little Pill, and you can easily hear how it feels very much like it could have been a lost song from that mid-90s era. Musically, this would have fit in perfectly on the original album. I love the haunting sound of the guitars against the pizzicato strings and the longing quality in Alanis's vocals. Lyrically, this is as self-depreciating as anything in her discography, which both took me by surprise and took me back to 20 years ago. As a male listener, I know I'm not the prime target for a song like this, but I just know it's going to hit the female fans right in the feels. And that's just track 1. Track 2 cranks things up even further with Ablaze, a beautifully constructed ode to parenting and the eternal bond of motherhood. The melody here is simple but effectively catchy, harkening back to some of her lighter, more pop-friendly songs. That's not to say that the lyrics are light, necessarily. On the contrary, there's a weight here that any parent can relate to. Definitely one of the best tracks on the album, and I'd rank it pretty high in her entire discography as well. You know, it's hard to believe it has been nearly 7 months since we heard the first single from this album. Reasons I Drink first dropped back in early December last year. Had the album dropped in May as originally planned, it still would have been a long 5-month gap. Still, I think it was a good choice for a single in terms of trying to hook her core fan base. The title alone suggests that we'll get one of Morissette's classic list-making songs. Ironically, we don't really ever get that list. The reasons she drinks, or eats, or in one expensive example, shops, are mostly implied rather than specifically detailed in the lyrics. I don't think that ambiguity serves the intended message well, though. It's hard to sympathize with what she fleetingly refers to as, quote, surviving this sick industry, without more details. But stay tuned, there's more to come on that subject. Still, I don't assume for a moment that she's still feeling so deeply burned by some washed-up actor from Full House, but I do wish she'd shine a brighter light on the industry abuses of today on this song. The next track is also trademark Alanis, with its self-depreciating lyrics and passive-aggressive declarations. How that type of thing resonates with any given listener will vary, and I can see this kind of song being grating for some. And no doubt, Diagnosis does drag on a bit and is the second longest song on the album. But where I struggle the most with it is the music. The predominantly solo piano-driven instrumentation feels a bit chaotic to me. The rhythm on the verses feels too fast, like in double time compared to the chorus. That may be intended to signify the manic state of Morissette's persona here, and if so, it's effectively disorienting. That didn't appeal to me personally, but as I said, your mileage may vary. I kind of feel the same way about the next track, Missing the Miracle. Your mileage may vary. But here, it's more because I feel like this is a fairly straightforward and formulaic song. I don't find the lyrical exploration of a relationship breakdown to be as enlightening as what we hear on other tracks. And the music doesn't feel like it has anything new to say either. I hesitate to call it a low point on the album, so rather let's just say it lands right in the middle. But if there's a wow moment on Such Pretty Forks in the Road, for me, it's Losing the Plot. Lyrically, this exploration of depression and self-doubt is as powerful as any on the album, but the music here is absolutely exquisite. I'll admit it may sound a bit dated, rooted strongly in a mid to late 90s sound, but man does it hit. The guitars and the percussion here are just relentless. I reached the end of the song and, as I said, I'm just like, wow. From the very first note, Reckoning could easily be mistaken for a Tori Amos track. Not that that's a bad thing by any means. She's one of my favorite artists. And this song for me strongly harkens back to her excellent early albums. I have to say, I love just about everything about this track. The production is truly gorgeous. I love the balance between the piano and the haunting guitars. And the understated percussion accents everything perfectly without becoming domineering. It's great stuff, and definitely an album highlight. Then as Sandbox Love kicks in with its soaring, shimmering U2 style guitars, you'd swear a different album had started. No doubt, this is a massive mood swing, and maybe at this point in the song cycle it's a well-needed respite. By the way, I stole that word from an earlier song. Thanks, Alanis. Anyway, this song is far and away the most joyous on the album. It's an anthem about finding love again and feeling like everything is amazing AF. I'm not kidding. Check out the chorus. It's a great track, but there's no way we could have played it in store back in '95. Next up on Her, we get a tender piano ballad that I wouldn't rank among my favorite tracks on the album, but it still feels thematically essential. The spiritual exploration in the lyrics provides a necessary perspective to the emotional highs and lows scattered across the song cycle. It's a kind of solace I'm sure many will relate to, finding comfort and peace in prayer and inner reflection. I don't love the song itself, but the album would feel incomplete without it. As we reach the penultimate track, we have the one song on the album that I flat out don't like. Where the previous song explored finding inner peace through spirituality, the mind expansion happening in Nemesis is more chemically induced. I'm not offended by that, nor do I endorse or reject either approach. but the execution here simply falls flat for me. With a runtime of nearly 6 minutes, it's the longest track on the album, and it feels stretched beyond its need. There's a rhythmic build going on that sounds like it could promisingly push into Florence and the Machine territory, but instead it ends up arriving at more of a dance beat that robs the track of any kind of interesting musical payoff. The closing track on the album was a bit of a surprise to me. Pedestal has a lyrical thread that seems to pick up where You Oughta Know left off, addressing an unnamed coattail rider that has taken advantage of her success over the years and traded favors on her fame. It's not as bitter a pill as her breakthrough hit, but still not the kind of story we might expect her to still be telling 25 years later. In a way, this is sort of the companion piece to Reasons I Drink, because so many of the quote-unquote reasons that she didn't get into on that earlier track are laid bare here at the end. It's a powerful and necessary point to make, especially for a female artist of her veteran stature. She's eligible for the Rock Hall now, believe it or not. Still, I will say I found the key change at the bridge to be a bit of a stumble, but otherwise I think Alanis truly has a full circle moment here, creating a tragically perfect bookend to where our journey with her started back in 1995. So with this new album arriving in the towering shadow of the 25th anniversary of Jagged Little Pill, it's natural to want to draw comparisons. But what I wonder is if aligning this release with the now partially postponed celebration of that watershed cultural moment was ill-advised. Such pretty forks in the road is certainly not Pill Part 2. If you come to this music expecting that same girl, the woman you find instead might disappoint you. On the other hand, if you've been along with Alanis during this entire 25-year journey, or even longer if you count her 2 early pop albums, this record feels like a very natural progression. Over the course of 9 albums, we've heard her grow and mature and deal with so many of the emotions that go along with that. Now in her mid-40s, Alanis is singing about the things the people of her generation, or more specifically the women of her generation, are dealing with. In America, in recent times, there's been an effort to shine a brighter light on depression and mental health issues, and to that end, this album fits perfectly into that narrative. So as the stadiums fill up next summer with Alanis fans screaming along with You Oughta Know and countless women remembering when they were that girl too, and then singing the words from Smiling or Sandbox Love right back to her and thinking, yeah, this is who I am today, I get it. I mean, I'm a guy, but I'm part of that generation. Getting married, having kids, dealing with, adult stuff. That resonates, for sure. I have tremendous feelings of affection and nostalgia for Jagged Little Pill, but I've also related to so much of the journey since then. This latest album explores so many complex emotions and experiences with a level of candor balanced with maturity that some other recent and similarly personal releases could have benefited from. So I'm giving Such Pretty Forks in the Road by Alanis Morissette an X rating of 7 out of 10. It's a collection of songs about a jagged little life, and sometimes it even feels like a mirror of your own. Once again, my name's Kyle, and this has been Track by Track. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, plus check out some of these other videos below that I think you might also enjoy. And of course, be sure to click subscribe, because true music fans always want new releases the day they come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.